I will call the meeting to order. Our first order of business is Pledge of Allegiance. I'd ask if you stand if you're able and join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. We don't have any recognition tonight, and nor do we have currently a student representative. So anything from the school committee members to report? Mr. Oakley.
I had the pleasure of joining the SHARP program this for a few weeks last month and this month, and I got to join in on a couple of their classes in their STEM section. We did a little solar energy experiment and a little wind power experiment. But I just, more than anything, wanted to shout out the organizers of that program because it's amazing. I was just right here, just right down the hall. It's amazing what they do with those kids, and it was just exciting to be a part of. So I just wanted to talk about the program and the organizers.
Thank you. And we try to bring people who run the SHARP program in early September so they can talk about what happened, and we try to bring a couple of SHARP kids along too to make sure that the community knows about it. But thanks for going, Rich.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Any other member of the committee have anything? I just have one piece, and I guess to you, Mr. Giovannoni, can you talk a little about, I know tonight we're missing one of the bands, but when the bands are at the town hall, because the Friends do a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the Middleborough Friends took over Middleborough Music Nights about 12 years ago from the original starters. Colarusso and Pavador used to do a duet. They were one of the starters, along with Gene Spalding from the health department. But the Middleborough Music Nights every Thursday night, 6 p.m. on the town hall lawn. It's a free concert. It's a great. We've had some great weather. The last 3 have been great weather. So come on down, all the way down to right before Labor Day weekend, a total of 8 weeks. So if you go to middleboroughfriends.com, it bumps you over to the Facebook page that has all the names of the bands. And come on down to the town hall lawn for a free concert.
Thank you very, very much. If no one, Mr. Catino is not here tonight, so we'll skip over him. If no one objects, although it's next on the agenda, I did want to bring it up early, which is the community discussion. I did make mention to all the members of the school committee. We had, the superintendent and I had a discussion along with the principal previously. There were a couple articles out, and there was a hearing in the State House on House Bill 443 and Senate Bill 247. In the past, I believe about 2 years ago, I met with one of the members of the Education Committee, which oversees both these bills. And I had a conversation with him when they had the hearing, and I was told at the time that they were having a hearing, but nothing was going to happen because at the time, the President of the Senate did not want to bring it up for a vote, and he would not allow it to come forth for a vote. I have since had conversations at the State House again, which would believe me to understand that these bills have some legs with them, and also in some respects have the approval of the Senate President currently. It's a different Senate President. So the superintendent and the high school principal and I had a lengthy conversation about it. I am under the belief, and I think you would all agree with me, that I do not have the authority to act on behalf of the school without the school committee's approval. So I do in limited cases, especially in between meetings and things like that, but it didn't seem right for me to be able to go out and fight these bills without the approval of the school committee. So I had a brief conversation with every member of the school committee and let them know that I was going to put this on and why I wanted to. I also put this on my Facebook page, and I know other people in the community picked it up so that they could see about it, that I wanted to put it out here. And I also wanted to make it clear that this was not necessarily a discussion about the Sachem name as much. For me, it was a discussion about two bad pieces of, in my view, two bad pieces of legislation that could cause Middleborough some harm. So that's where I wanted to start the discussion. I do want to start by saying I did not graduate from Middleborough High School, so I've not been a Sachem, but two of my children have. I know some members of the committee have children who have been members of the high school, and some who have not been Sachems. So we lay it out that way. Yes.
That we make you an honorary Sachem because of your service to community.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm going to recuse myself from the vote, so I will ask the vice chair to take over.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I really do. And so, just so everyone knows, this is a part of what I do. Mr. Giaminoni knows this probably more than most people. I deal with the State House quite a bit. I'm up at the State House quite a bit. I also have in the past worked for both the House and a member of the Senate. I have done a wide range of jobs where I've had to look at legislation and review pieces of legislation. The reason I find this bill problematic to Middleborough is for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, it does talk about the ability to wait on certain things and change your team with uniforms over a period of time. To me, it looks horrible. We try to rotate uniforms probably every couple of years. It's very expensive, so you can't change uniforms all at once, you rotate them. So there would be a period in time where if we followed this legislation, you would have, let's suppose we went with another name again. If we were forced to, you went with another name, and then you had half or three-quarters of your teams playing as Sachems, and then people playing as other things, and things like that. Somebody pointed out that in their estimation, a Sachem was a chief. Would chief be allowed? And to be honest with you, based on the piece of legislation that I looked at, I don't even know if it would be allowed. It could be a problematic. The same way, for example, one of the names cited was Marauders. Although Marauders just doesn't have a Native American meaning, it has a wide historical meaning. Because this particular town used a tomahawk in their logo, that's why they were considering it offensive. I will tell you, and so again, it also talks about pieces that are part of the buildings and when they would have to change. It makes a comment about construction. I don't know from the language that I read if that meant, for example, when you were building a brand new building, or if it meant when you were doing some work on whatever that building was, you would have to change at that time. I think clearly that can be very expensive to this community and cost us a considerable amount of money. So that was important to me.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
With respect to that, it absolutely, no matter how you slice it, is absolutely an unfunded mandate.
Right.
And I'm sure that the state auditor would come to that finding when they reviewed it. But I want to say that we looked at this and it was in excess of $1 million to change and rebrand, in excess of. And that was on an existing facility that was aged and doesn't have the branding that we have today. Luckily, our branding is more neutral, but still, it could be quite substantial in cost on a brand new facility that may not be renovated for another 30, 40 years. But I'm sorry,
No,
the
that's
cost
fine.
is a big part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the concern to me, mainly about the cost. Aside from again, aside from belief in the name, to me, it's a piece about bad legislation. And to be honest with you, where the bad legislation starts is, again, my understanding from the limited research that I've done is currently there are 41 towns or cities in the Commonwealth that use Native American either names or logos to represent their sporting teams. So I've been, like I said, I've worked at the State House, I've done things at the State House, and when you have a hearing, generally speaking, you would send out an invitation for that hearing to all those people who would be affected by it. And we never got any information about that hearing. Myself or the superintendent never got any information about that hearing. And so that bothers me. I mean, you expect people to make giant changes, and you're not being open with them about when it happens. I do recognize that, it's partly our responsibility to make sure we look and see whenever hearings are going on. But I would add that the State House does not fall under the same open meeting provisions that we have to. And so sometimes it is difficult, and sometimes it is hard, and sometimes it happens relatively quickly, not in a 48-hour window that we have to post over 2 business days without counting weekends or holidays. So that becomes problematic. So again, I come here tonight, I wanted to give anyone in the community an opportunity to say what they wanted to say. I also wanted to give a chance for, the superintendent, I hope, will weigh in. We received a letter from Paul. I did ask, somebody had asked me, what if they couldn't attend tonight's meeting? I had given them my school email address, and as you all know, any letter that I received, I just checked now to make sure I hadn't received anything. You have everything that was sent over to me. I forwarded to all members of the committee so that they could see and be a part of it. So with that, the only downside to this, I felt we had to have the hearing today. The reason I felt we had to have the hearing today was because 2 reasons in my mind. One, there's an opportunity for things to be done over the summer without voice vote and without having to take a registered vote, especially in August and September. So I wanted it done before then. 2, I also wanted the opportunity of any former student who wanted to speak on this to be able to, knowing that by our August meeting, they're generally in college. So that would be unfair to them. My only regret with that was that Paul couldn't attend. I know Paul sent you all a letter, and so if you guys don't have a problem, I'm going to read the letter because I think it's important. Dear Mr. Lynch, Mr. Young, and members of the Middleborough School Committee, I'm very sorry that I am unable to attend this very important meeting in regard to the questioning of our long history as the Middleborough Sachems. I am very concerned that a decision will be made without anyone taking a moment to visit our school and community to see the sincere pride and respect we collectively share for our beloved Sachems. The potential loss to the entire community of our mascot is deeply concerning, and it is important for you and our community to know that I am in full support of keeping our tradition of the Middleborough Sachems, especially when we begin to transition into the new Middleborough High School. The Middleborough High School Sachem is treated with the highest level of respect. The term Sachem refers to the leader of the Algonquin tribe. The Sachem was chosen to lead its people. It was the highest position within the tribe, and the Sachem was selected by members of the tribe. It was not based on a hereditary structure. The position and respect that the Sachem had within the tribe is how we treat our mascot today. A Sachem is a symbol of strength and our mantra of being Sachem strong. The pride and meaning of the Sachem reflects in everything we do at Middleborough High School. You see examples of being Sachem strong throughout our school, through our engagement and our expectations for excellence academically, athletically, civically, and socially. These tenets have been paramount to our school and our growth as a school. We have modeled the ideas and importance of the Sachem into our true identity of our high school. The identity of the Sachem of our school has evolved over the years. To be more culturally aware and proficient, our logo and branding has changed to the orange M, with the pride of our history and the 2 black and white feathers. The symbolism of the feathers is to ensure that future generations of students who enter the doors of the new Middleborough High School will always remember the history and honor of our community and its past. The sachem has become the hallmark of our core values and beliefs of our school and our vision for every graduate. Our goal for each student is to attain the skills to solve problems, acknowledge global issues, communicate well, help others, embrace lifelong learning, and make learning relevant, and to always strive for excellence. That is what sachems do each and every day. Being a sachem in our school means so much more than simply our mascot. It is our identity. Having sachem pride is a celebration of our rich past and its history, the excitement of our present with our significant growth as a school, and the pride you feel the moment you step through the front doors. However, most importantly, having sachem pride is about our future, the future of the generations of sachems that will lead our school, our community, and even the world. The sachem means leader, and that is our expectation for each and everyone who graduates from Middleborough High School, to be a leader within their family, their community, church, profession, and to always use their leadership to help others. That is what sachems do. It is important to note that the rebranding of our school has been an evolution over time. You will never see any stereotypical behaviors at a sporting event or student activity. The traditions of Tribe Nation has been celebrated within the spirit of the black and orange, and you would never see behavior in our stands that would be contrary to the respect towards the sachem. Our secret sachem at our rallies is now the most spirited student in the school, and they adorn themselves in school colors with pride. Never will you see anything that would lead to a stereotype or portrayal that would work against our expectation and respect of being a sachem at Middleborough High School. We will continue to work to engage and to teach our students the rich history and the meaning of sachem and its place within our community. In closing, it is with great hope that our community will come together to respond to this pending legislation with a true commitment to maintain the Middleborough sachem. We have respected the Native American heritage and history of the Algonquins and will continue to do so as we move forward into the next chapter of Middleborough High School. More importantly, once you are a sachem, you are always a sachem. This mission of keeping the spirit of sachem so very close to our hearts, to ensure that every child growing up in the town of Middleborough can say proudly, sachem pride. We will always be sachem strong. Thank you for your commitment to the orange and black and to the future of our beloved school. With all that, I am in sachem pride, Paul Brannigan. So I did want to read that. The other thing I just wanted to talk about, and we asked the superintendent to just make a quick mention of, is sort of the history and tradition. So Brian, I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, members of the audience. I can provide a little bit of history that I'm aware of from doing some digging through research in the Middleborough Gazette. What happened in Middleborough, at Middleborough High School, especially Memorial High School, back in the early teens and when the building was opened, there was a sachem newsletter, a Middleborough sachem leadership and literature newsletter that was sort of the foundation of the journalism club and the English club. And they produced a magazine for the students throughout the years. When sports became more popular, we had some very successful teams. But our teams were named after coaches and after our town. They were the Middleboroughans, they were the Middleborough men, they were the Macy men when Joe Macy became a very popular longtime coach and eventually athletic director. But it wasn't until the very early 60s when the student body at Memorial High School decided that they wanted to name their team or their mascot the sachem. And that's where the sachem name came along for teams because sports at the time were there weren't a lot of mascots back then. And so the mascot became popular at that time and evolved through the years. It has had many symbols and many monikers, and we're at the point, as Mr. Brannigan said, where we're trying to be extremely more culturally sensitive. We still have the semblances of the face of a Native American in some of our symbols, and again, on some of our uniforms. But we are working gradually as old materials deteriorate, and we're replacing materials to do so in a culturally sensitive way and to maintain that sachem pride. I strongly support everything that Mr. Brannigan said, and everything he said is true. And if you go through the hallways, you'll see it. And like I said, there are some faces of Native Americans still present here and there. They do get through occasionally, and we try to avoid that, and we're working hard to make sure we avoid that. But to keep that sachem pride and to keep that sachem name. But it's a term of honor, it's a term of respect, and it's always been treated as such. 40 years ago, I graduated as a Middleborough sachem, and the old term, once a sachem, always a sachem, does come true here, and I always feel that. I feel that sachem pride down deep inside, and will continue to do so. So I am fully supportive of whatever the school committee can do, politically or otherwise, to maintain the sachem name. It is not a derogatory name in any way. It's a term of honor and respect, and I would hope that you would support that, certainly. Thank you.
And one other piece that members of the committee and members of the audience may or may not know, I have tried to reach out. There is one recognized tribe in Massachusetts, and that is the Mashpee Wampanoags. So I have tried to reach out to them. I do have some relationships with various members of their council and members of their tribe. I would also add that several years ago, when Middleborough was in conversation about a casino, the first meeting was held here between the tribe and the community. At that time, the chairman of the tribe came. One of the questions that he was specifically asked by a member of the audience was, did the tribe have a problem with the name sachems being used? And his response was, no, we do not have a problem. And so I say that to everybody to put it in some context. I know that could change over time, and I'm trying to reach out to them and have a conversation with them too. But that's where I'm at. If no one objects, I'm going to turn it over and see if anyone from the audience wants to talk, if that's okay with everybody. So I would open it up to the audience. All I'd ask you, you're more than welcome to come down. You can either sit or stand at the microphone if you want to say anything. I just ask that you give us your name and where you're from, and we'll go from there. And the other thing too is I know I've had a couple of people ask me the question sort of online, and I've responded this way. You don't have to be a resident of Middleborough. We open this up to the community, especially people who are members of alumni. They're more than welcome to come and have a conversation, so feel free. So anyone want to come down? I'll start with you, Mr. Pitsley. I know you want to talk. Welcome, Mr. Pitsley. Let's see, that's it.
Justin Pitsley. I'm a member of the community. I live in Middleborough. I'm a Middleborough sachem, a graduate of Middleborough High School, 2001. I have 2 children in the school system right now, one on its way. Will be in pre-K next year, and I teach at the high school. This will be my 14th year teaching at Middleborough High. Obviously, I'm in support of our current sachem name, and just a few points as someone that works in the building and as someone who's grown up in this community, a couple points to make. First, there have been times in the past where particularly the image of the Native American person has been used, and like Mr. Lynch said, you'll still find it from time to time. But certainly as a faculty member, we've worked hard to phase that out. So everything we're doing now is the logo that you see in front of you. And that was done intentionally, that wasn't by accident. We are intentionally working towards making it culturally appropriate and sensitive. I know some disagree on what that means, but that's the intent of what we're doing. As someone who's responsible for a large program in the school with the music program, we certainly do that in all of our literature and everything. So there's that piece to it. And I'm speaking for myself, of course, not the entire faculty. So I want to make that clear. I will say this, that this is not about a team name. the sachem at Middleborough High School goes far beyond a name on a uniform. Some of the commentary I've read and conversations I've had, well, it's just a team name. What's the big deal to take sachem off and put something else on? In our school community, it goes way beyond that. And Mr. Brannigan in particular has done a tremendous job at embedding what it means to be a leader. And no one knows that better in this state and maybe in this country about student leadership than Paul Brannigan. And he's done that, and he's used that sachem, the model of a leader, to build that into what we do. And so I know personally as a teacher and someone that oversees a music program, we build that into the leadership inside of that program. And our students are striving for those things, that what it means to be a leader, and held to that standard. And when they don't, it's compared up what it should be to what they're actually doing. And so this goes beyond, it's a culture of excellence, a culture of leadership, something that we want all of our students to do in whatever path they choose beyond Middleborough High School. And so it's not just a team name, it goes well beyond that. We wear it with pride, we discuss it with pride. Anytime that a student, you can never 100% guarantee that students are appropriate at all times. Those are great teaching moments. Those are times to say and have those conversations. But I can tell you, in the time I've been teaching here, I've maybe seen one in 14 years. It just doesn't happen. Further, I'd say that the branding of this, the Middleborough Sachem, is so strong in this community, and very rarely am I heard it talked about as something about being a stereotype or a caricature. Little kids know about it. They can't wait to be Middleborough High School sachems and part of that community. So I think it's important. I think it's a part of our community. Of course, if we had to change it, we would always do what we do, but it's just such a core part and such a central part of what we do. I would hate to see that go. So I think that's where we stand with that. I think that's pretty much what I have to say.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate it. Anyone else have comments they wish to make? Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Scott Miles. I'm a resident of Middleborough. Not a lifetime. My wife is. She was born and raised in Middleborough, and she did graduate from Middleborough High. And I do have currently have a student who is a Middleborough Sachem 3 sports. When I first heard about this, it was a no-brainer. I'm in support. I wanted to come and hear what was being said and what was happening. And I guess I just have a couple of questions. Sure. One is, I'm just curious, very briefly, if you guys could tell me a little bit about the background of these bills and how they came about.
Sure.
And then second question, kind of a follow-up, is what are the next steps and what can we do to either influence the outcome, or do we have a say in the outcome?
So I'm going to take the last question first, if that's okay.
Sure.
I think everybody has a say in the outcome. It depends on how you contact, even just your local legislation delegation. We have 3 state reps and 1 state senator who would have votes in this. And just to reach out to them and have a conversation about what you want. So I think that's important. And the same applies. You can also have conversations where you can call the office of the Senate President, the Speaker of the House. You can call the office of every state senator and every state representative. That's okay. I mean, even if you don't live in the district, it's an issue that they're voting on that pertains to us, and especially in a district, in a piece of legislation that basically covers only 40 cities and towns. So some may think it's an easy vote because they don't have any towns representative in that 40. So it's an easy yes. How this legislation came to be, this is a piece of legislation that has been the last at least 6 years that I know about. Legislation generally gets filed January through February of the beginning of a legislative cycle, so right after election. So when that happens, it goes through, it gets assigned to a committee. There are lots and lots of bills in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is, just so everyone knows, Massachusetts is one of the only states in the union where your state representative and state senator are required under law to file a piece of legislation that you give them. As long as it's properly formatted, they have to file it. This came from a couple things. One was mainly there was in the around Worcester area, there has been a consistent battle over a particular name. I'm not sure which one, but some members of the community have asked, what?
One in Quincy also, Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
the
one in
Red Raiders.
Quincy is more about their logo. Quincy has a logo that some have deemed offensive. And they've had conversations at both the school committee and the city council level, and again, this near Worcester, a place, same thing, where people haven't changed it. And so people have asked their legislators to file bills to change it. Like I said before, in the past, I knew about it, I'd have conversations with a member of the committee, and I was told that the Senate President wouldn't bring it up to the floor. There's a new Senate President, and so this Senate President appears not to withhold it back for a variety of reasons. So that's why now more than any other time. I hope I answered what you had.
You did, and I guess I would just say one last thing is maybe, we saw this on Middleborough, Helping Middleborough on Facebook. If you could just kind of iterate to the public what they can do in
Yep.
terms of, reaching out to their representatives, I think that would be a big help. And if I understand this correctly, it's a state bill, so
Yes.
it's not just our community that's going to be voicing it. If we don't get everybody involved, we could slip through the cracks, even though we have a great,
Right.
representation, it could fall through the cracks because not every community does the same, correct?
Right. And locally, my understanding is that probably the most local community is Dartmouth. Dartmouth's the most local community that would also affect.
Okay, great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ironically, Carver isn't in that list, and they are the Crusaders, and if anyone knows their religious history, what happened during the Crusades, I think that the atrocities committed during the Crusades should have been included in this bill if they were going to do it. But I digress.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Welcome.
Hi, I'm Noah Miles, member of the community, and I go to Middleborough High School right now. And I don't know, I wanted to come up just to give the perspective of someone who's living in that culture right now, that Sachem's culture. Like I remember growing up, me and my friends, we'd go to our Pats games and our Cobras games, and we'd cheer and go wild. But being on the field, like behind the goalposts at those Sachem's games, we'd see all the kids going out there and being crazy and going wild for the games and stuff. And we would see them embodying that Sachem culture, that leadership that we'd all see. And we'd all want to grow up and be like that. I'm so sorry. I'm like so nervous right now.
You're doing fine. You're doing excellent. Thank you.
Like, we grow up and we just want to be exactly like them. We'd see, like, it would be people's brothers that we knew and stuff like that, and we just want to grow up and be exactly like them. And now living in that, walking through the halls every day, I can see all the kids growing up and embodying that culture of Sachem spirit, that leadership, the humility, the acceptance, the respect. I just think it's an amazing culture that we have here, and I think that, like Mr. Pitzley said, it's so much more than just a name. It's something that we've grown up, like you mentioned a name change considered being the Marauders, and it hit me just like we're not the Marauders, we're not the Bears, we're not anything like that. We're the Sachems, and we come out and we show that every single day. We show the respect and the leadership that we all have, and I think that taking away that name just takes away something from this entire community, and that's just what I wanted to say. I wanted to give my perspective being a student in the school right now.
Thank you for taking the time. We really appreciate it. Great job. Welcome.
My name is Melissa, and I'm a member of the community. I wrote something up
Sure.
because I'm not good at off the cusp, but before that, I do have a couple of questions, specifically regarding the cost and the finances. We are in the process of building the new high school.
Yep.
where are we with this logoing and branding, and how is that affected right now?
It's not affected in any way, shape, or form because there's no change to it. I'll tell you that up front.
Okay.
There are things that are part of the buy for the new high school that will have the logo on it. The logo being the M with the black and white feather. And that, a couple of things with that. One is that that's not at the purview of the school committee. It's at the purview of the building committee. And all that has already been vetted in the community and put out. Everything that we were going to put the logo on and put it out on has been presented to the community. So that's that. It doesn't change that at all.
Can you speak to whether if this change were to occur, how that would affect that process? And
Like I said at the beginning, there's a provision in the bill that says that when there's some building construction, you would have to change it. Now, I think people can interpret it in entirely different ways. Some may interpret it, for example, if you're building a new building, then you have to change the logo, which some make sense. But then there's other things that people can interpret it as if you do any building construction, you make any changes, that you have to change everything at once. So that's part of why I say I think it's a bad piece of legislation. It doesn't specifically outline what happens or where it happens. And the reason it doesn't, it goes back to what Brian had said, because the legislators are not supposed to put mandates out there that are unfunded. So they would maintain that it's funded because over a period of time you have to do it. I think I would maintain that that's not the case. If you're forcing us to change, you've created an unfunded mandate, and then you'd have to pay for it. I believe we could sue. All that suing would allow us to do, at this case, is get the auditor to rule it's an unfunded mandate, and she would force the legislature to pay for the changes. Now, in the end, the changes would still have to occur, but it would be who would do it. That's a lengthy process and over a period of time. So, and it doesn't always mean that the auditor is going to agree with you. So,
I'm not sure whether you would be able to answer this or not, but theoretically, as where we are in the building process, would it be less of a financial impact if we were to change it now, before the building is set, before everything is completed?
That's a great question, and the answer I'm going to give you is I don't know.
Okay.
And the reason I don't know is this. Yes, there would be probably some savings if this happened over a period of time. But I know there would be additional costs because some of it's included in the plans would have to be redrawn and refocused. So there's additional monies that would be spent up front. I think part of my concern would be spending additional monies. First of all, spending additional monies that the town doesn't have to spend because this legislation doesn't exist. And I would also say that everything, not only has it been approved and voted on by the town, the state, through the Mass School Building Assistance Fund, has given their approval for all our plans and everything that we're doing. They have to approve on everything. And they have a project manager there to make sure that what we presented to them is what we're building.
Would you expect any issues were this bill to pass and we were to have to make those changes? Do you think that we would be impacted and we wouldn't get approval?
No, we're already approved.
Okay. So we would not need to go through another approval process?
No, I don't think so. I think the question would be when they would make you change the logo.
Okay.
And when they would make you change the various pieces. So that would be the thing.
I apologize in advance because I'm a lengthy speaker.
That's fine.
But I have lived in Middleborough for almost 7 years with children in the public school system. Having children, I've never wanted to make waves that could potentially affect them negatively, and even standing, or in this case sitting, speaking before you now, I still have that fear deep within me. I've tried to be a good role model for my children. I've always said that you should stand up for what you believe in and to speak up for others when they cannot speak for themselves. That being said, if I did not come here tonight, I would be a hypocrite, because for the past few years, I've dreaded the day when my children would be choosing a high school to go to, though not for typical reasons. The dread fills me because I would hate to have a child of mine in high school utilizing colonized caricatures of their ancestry. I'm here tonight because I want to make it clear that there are supporters of these bills in this town, and that there are people that want change, because I personally believe that it's time for our mascot and our logo to go. As we're all aware, Massachusetts Bills H-443 and S-247 are bills that would introduce legislation banning the use of Native American mascots. The current logo for our high school is an M with some feathers, but as recently as 2015, it was the severe-looking orange man with a mostly shaved skull and an arrow through the remaining hair. It was almost laughable because it's a Midwestern stereotype. It's not even a realistic depiction of the people who inhabited the eastern Algonquin area, which is where we are. I'd like to take a moment to talk about what I've heard in our community regarding these bills, specifically the comments surrounding why we should keep the mascot and why we should fight these bills. There was recently a Taunton Gazette article, and discussion came up on a local community Facebook page regarding how this would relate over in Middleborough. One community member recommended that we, quote, stop listening to the overly offended, overly vocal minority, as he is, quote, so sick of this kind of crap. 10 community members agreed with him. Another community member said, quote, wouldn't it become such a tragedy for someone to be offended? Offended by the name Satchams? Oh well, tough tomahawks. Another community member furthered conversation by suggesting that we, quote, replace all streets and rivers with different names also because it offends someone. And yet another community member was kind enough to, quote, nominate all streets to be changed to one of the following: Safe Space Lane, Crybaby Street, Personally Offended Drive, and more that I won't repeat. Many community members agreed that we should just be, quote unquote, Satcham strong. These are some tame examples of a kinder conversation, and I won't justify repeating some of the less kind comments. But Satcham strong. I wonder if we truly know what Satcham strong means, or what it could be or what it should be. Do we know anything about where this word that we are parading around comes from? I wonder how many people in the room know where the word Satcham comes from and what it translates to. I wonder how many people know the name of the tribe that inhabited what is now Middleborough and the languages that they spoke. I wonder how many people know what the role of sachem was and who was entitled to it. I wonder if we really know anything about the people we are allegedly honoring. For those of you that do know, thank you for having educated yourselves, and please correct me if I am wrong in my information. For those of you who don't know, I'd like to answer some of the questions I just asked. Sachem comes from the Narragansett language. It's an anglicized of sachem, we actually pronounced Sakim, and it means king or chief. The Wampanoag were peoples that inhabited the eastern Algonquin part of the U.S. The name translates to Easterners or people of the dawn. They spoke Wampanoag, which is a dialect of the Massachusetts language. That's part of the Algonquin family of languages. In Wampanoag culture, there would be multiple sachems. These sachems would make choices for a tribe based on counsel given to them. They would make arrangements with other sachems and arrange for trade and protection. Sachems were chosen by elders. There's a fun side note. Wampanoag culture was matrifocal and matrilineal, with property and hereditary status passed down through the women in the family. Women could hold all the same roles as men and were equals. There were women elders, in many instances, these sachems were women. Anyhow, these sachems were not necessarily fighters and not necessarily athletic. So what is the connection to the sachem as a mascot and an actual sachem? Everything that I just told you could be learned with a quick Google search, or better yet, by visiting the Robbins Museum right here in Middleborough. My children aren't in high school yet, but correct me if I'm wrong. We have this great resource here in town, but our students don't necessarily utilize it. It's free for Middleborough students. It's activities that can help educate our children about Native American history, about the people who lived right here in this town. Native American history is minimally taught in schools, and when it is, it's incredibly whitewashed. Why my children came home during elementary school, here in Middleborough, with a book and homework teaching that pilgrims invite the Native Americans to the first Thanksgiving. And I wonder how many people also believe this. Another commenter that I heard another comment that I heard was that we use Sachem to honor Native American folk and that the commenter takes pride in the name. If we are taking pride in honoring, where's our focus on the education? Where are our statues? Where are our events celebrating our shared values? How can we do honor when we teach our children so little about the actual culture, about the history and the traditions? How is this pride? Again, I ask, how can we be Sachem strong when we don't truly understand what a Sachem is? I want to return to the comments I'm hearing from a lot of people who are against these bills, and I want to talk about something called cognitive biases. There's a lot of talk concerning this is the way it has always been, and how if it doesn't offend me, why should it offend them? Because it's an honor, from folks who don't want these bills to pass. A cognitive bias is a flaw in judgment that generally comes from errors of memory, social attributions, or miscalculations. One of the more well-known cognitive biases is the status quo bias. This is when we are influenced by our apprehension of change to try and make choices and keep opinions that allow things to either remain the same or change as little as possible. I'd like to challenge the people who are against the bill because we've always been the Sachems. I'd like them to try to think of another reason why we should keep it. Another type of cognitive bias is the empathy gap. This is where if we are happy with something, we fail to see or be able to relate to how others are unhappy. We lack the empathy to understand their plight. The folks who are saying that this is an honor and people shouldn't be offended by it are the victims of the empathy gap. I'd like to ask them to see this request through the eyes of the people who are filing the bills, the Native Americans who for years have only asked to be respected, and see if they can drop their biases and empathize. Removing the Native American mascots and logos would simply be a step towards showing respect and actually honoring people who are just asking for some decency. I promise this is almost done.
You're fine.
Someone had also said that Native Americans should be happy because of mascots because they're always upset about erasure. Using a Native American word in a false depiction is not going to prevent erasure. It's only going to help further stereotypes. I myself come to you as someone who was once beholden to my own empathy bias, as I was not bothered by the Sachems. I felt it harmless and that there were more important things to worry about. If I wasn't bothered by it, why should anyone else? I come to you as a person with Native American heritage. I don't claim to be a Native American myself because I was unfortunately not raised within the community. I wasn't raised within the community because my great-grandmother, a Robbins, don't know if that name now sounds familiar, she fell victim to colonization. She took on a Christian name and culturally assimilated. In order to fit in, she stopped sharing much of her culture and her history with her children, who then had little to share with their children. My great-grandmother was the last woman in her tribe still living on her ancestral land at the time my grandmother was born. She was lucky not to have been forced onto a reservation like many others. That land is now a CVS. I'm working to be a better person, a better parent, and a better community member. This can be difficult at times because growth does not come without change, and change can be a scary thing. I wish that Middleborough would take the opportunity now, as we are in the process of building a new high school and preparing for a new future, to grow and change and aspire for better, starting with the opportunity to meet others with decency by taking steps to remove the Sachem, regardless of whether Massachusetts Bills H443 and S247 pass or not. With that, I offer the suggestion that we allow the children of Middleborough to come up with the ideas for a new mascot now, before we have instituted one at the high school, and let them vote on a bright new future. If we remain the same, if we do not take this opportunity, we are not teaching our children to be the best they can be because we fear this change. Safeguarding what has always been can often be a disservice to the future and what could be. While I respect the Middleborough that is and was, I would like to see the Middleborough that it can be. With that, I would like to thank you for your time, and I'd like to say, Winnikisuk, which is Algonquin for a good day. So I thank you for your time. And then, just because I blathered on for so long, I did print out a copy.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. Do you have an extra one? Because I'm going to give one to the secretary.
I do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it. Other comments? Hello again.
Hello again. Just real quick, and I do respect your opinion, and thank you for sharing. I just want to really reiterate that the biggest thing I've taken out of today is that we are evolving and changing, and it's not about the name or the logo per se, but today's meaning. If we go back to Paul Brannon's letter, that's what this is about. It's about the Sachem Pride of what it means today, and keeping that spirit alive. And I think that's important for people who may have shared her sentiments.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? I'm going to turn it to the board. Greg.
I'll be honest, on this issue, I do have some concerns about our use of the Native American, and so I did some research, and I found this on culturalsurvival.org. It's an advocacy group for Native Americans, and I want to say I really like the way Paul Brannigan has developed this culture in his high school, and I don't think this issue before us is about the culture of the high school. I think Paul does a great job. I think everything that he said in his letter, yes, I agree. I don't think the culture should change. However, it's just the use of the name that we're talking about tonight. So the gentleman in the back asked about some background. I have a letter here written by this advocacy group, and it was designed to be sent to the legislature to promote these bills, and I just would like to read with the chair's permission.
Absolutely.
That letter. Decades of social science research have shown that Native American mascots have serious social and emotional consequences for Native American youth, including low self-esteem, less future aspiration, and anxiety. For non-Native people, they promote a false understanding of Native Americans, normalize culturally insensitive behaviors, and make them more likely to internalize stereotypes of racial minorities. The National Congress of American Indians, the country's largest Native American advocacy group, has been fighting to eliminate Native American mascots since the 1960s. Currently, over 115 tribal, government, education, professional, civil rights, and religious organizations in the United States have recognized the negative health impacts of Native American mascots and called for their elimination. In Massachusetts, this includes the Chappaquiddick tribe of the Wampanoag Nation, the Herring Pond Wampanoag tribe, the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, the Nipmuc Nation. Organizations in Massachusetts include the Cultural Survival, Massachusetts Center for Native American Awareness, Massachusetts Commission on Indian Affairs, Massachusetts Teachers Association, North American Indian Center of Boston, and the United American Indians of New England. In addition to the NCAI, the national organizations include National Education Association, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, the American Psychological Association, the American Anthropological Association, the National Collegiate Athletic Association. All those groups are in favor of eliminating the mascots. In 2001, a resolution of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights stated the use of stereotypical images of Native Americans by educational institutions has the potential of creating racially hostile educational environment that may be intimidating to Indian students, end quote. Many school districts have been confronted with this issue, fear community backlash, so they fail to take a stand. Civil rights issues must be addressed at the state level. The SD 937, HD 3645 will be a first step towards ending this harmful discrimination in our Massachusetts public schools. I hope you agree that Native American mascots have no place in our public schools. Thank you for considering your co-sponsoring this legislation. So that's the letter written that was to promote this bill from this advocacy group. Okay. After doing more research on it, my personal opinion is I'm actually in favor of the bills. I do think we can have a great culture here without using the unwanted use of a culturally appropriated name. I would be interested to hear, Rich, what the local tribes, if they have a statement to us, that would certainly be helpful. But I also, like Mr. Pitzley said, this school is going to be great because of the leadership we have. And whether we call ourselves Sachems or another name, I don't think that's the issue here. I don't think anybody wants to change the culture of the school. But I think we need to, and the research I did is I think this bill will pass at some point. If it doesn't pass this time around, I think it's just going to keep going. I think at some point, it's going to go through. That's just my opinion on this. And then we're going to be forced to change. So I would like to suggest that the immediate issue is the logo for the high school. The estimate I heard was $2 million to change the logo after it's been built. I like the logo that has the plain M versus the M with the feather. I'm wondering if that's a prudent course to maybe at least check on that. Say, if we change to the logo, we don't have to change the name, we don't have to change sports uniforms. I'm just saying, just for the new building high school, that might be something we should look at. I know it's not under our purview, but I think we could send a communication to the high school building committee asking them to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. And just, Greg had sent me that particular piece earlier, so just, again, to be clear with people, that was sent January 30th, so I think the numbers were erroneously set, and that's why the numbers we have on our agenda, which is House Bill 443 and Senate Bill 247, are the correct numbers. So I just want to make sure that no matter who what was listening, that be out there. Other comments? Sure.
I just wanted to say that I think the hardest part for me about this is not necessarily knowing what it feels like to be upset by this, and hearing more and more feedback from the community I think is really important. But I would also really be interested, like Greg said, I'll reiterate on what the local tribe feels. But I think for me, I'm trying to process it in more of a just logistics type way. And I actually think that the suggestion Melissa had about education around I mean, I'm sure, I think I understand that we already do some of that already, but more of the education around the local tribe and the way things worked, to me, would make me feel a lot better about this, especially when we compare Middleborough in this bill versus the others. I think we are, head and shoulders above the other schools and their uses of caricatures in some really culturally insensitive ways. So I really like the idea of. So I'll say I at this point I'm in favor of having you go fight it, because I like how it sounds around this community. I like how it's being used, but I do agree that we probably could take additional steps to increase the education around where it comes from. And so for me, with that kind of compartmentalized and put aside, what I'm looking at now is cost now versus cost later, and the eventuality that it could very well come through, like Greg was saying, whether it's this session or next. And so I would be relying on the high school building committee at that point to I think I also heard the $2 million estimate, to provide some estimates on what it would cost, and then it would really just be a discussion of what would it cost to do right now versus to do later. So that's kind of where I stand, and if you were to ask for a vote right now, this very minute, I would vote to have you go and fight it as a school committee chair, but I would also want more information around that, cost now versus cost later. So that's kind of where I stand.
Yeah, and I do want to point out a couple things. One is, again, as I said before, a lot of this revolves around, for me, about bad legislation, and again, the ability to fight bad legislation. That doesn't mean for example, the superintendent and myself and the high school principal have had conversations about reaching out to the tribes, having conversations with them. There is several tribes, although one recognized there's several tribes from the area who've been a part of this area, and having conversations with them about just exactly what you were talking about, the educational piece, which I agree with, Rich, and we've talked about. So that's still open for discussion. What I put out today, for today's meeting, was just the idea of the legislation. And the reason I'm against the particular legislation, again, I already went through it, I'm not going to go through it again, but it still has the opportunity to pass at certain times without really going through the process that it normally has to go through, and that's what I want to make sure it doesn't happen and see. We can continue to have these discussions. We continue to have, the discussion about what it would cost and everything like that. I don't have a problem with that, nor have I ever had a problem with that. But it's just more discussions about a particular piece of legislation. And I don't necessarily, I disagree. Just because legislation that keeps coming up, doesn't mean it's going to pass eventually. I will tell you this, a perfect example, it's never passed, this particular type of legislation has not passed in any of the 50 states except for Maine. And the reason it passed in Maine was it passed in Maine after every high school had changed. So the idea that it, helped change, it didn't. It happened after every high school had changed on their own. And again, for about 25, 30 years, it had been in the Maine legislature consistently, never passed until everyone had changed on their own. So I don't know that it will come to fruition, and that's what I say. But again, to me, it's about bad legislation. This is not necessarily a discussion in my eyes about the state chimney. Other comments?
I have a couple questions for you, Rich, and I don't know if you'll know the answers to these. Do you know if a hearing is scheduled?
There's no hearing
for either one of
scheduled. There
these?
was a hearing on June. And again, we weren't invited to it, so.
Okay. And could we get, maybe, probably not for the next meeting, but maybe September, October, could we get some estimates from the building committee as
Yeah,
to
we
what
can
it would
ask.
cost to change anything if that,
We can ask.
if we have to do
could ask
that,
that part.
if we vote to do that? Okay, thank you.
That's no problem.
We have two, excuse me, Mr. Chair, through you. We do have two members of the school committee who are on the committee.
Yep.
And I also serve on the committee, and Sarah also serves on the committee, so.
I've seen this legislation come up each session for the last, I think, 7 sessions. It's been coming, it's about almost 14 years it's been coming up. And each year, it doesn't change much from year to year. It's 2 years, because it's a 2-year session. But the concern is, as you put it, if you actually read the legislation, and you can go online and read it, the biggest problems that I have with it, one is they don't have a funding source.
Right.
If you don't have a funding source to do this, you're turning around, you're trying to force the communities to do it, number one. Number two, an unfunded mandate does not mean just the community itself. Every single person in this room who might or might not have hundreds or thousands of dollars worth of Sachem gear sitting in their closets right now will be lining up, and I will be, if this happens and goes through, I will be lining up with my gear and looking for payback from the Commonwealth, because they're taking away property, and under the Constitution of the United States and the Massachusetts Constitution, which goes back further than it, you can't take people's property, and that's what this actual legislation does. It takes people's property away from them without compensation. Fair compensation is what is required. This legislation doesn't have it. Unfortunately, it was not well written. Will it pass? It could. Will it pass in the next 10 years? Absolutely it will. If you look at what the country's doing nowadays, absolutely. We're absolutely going to have something like this change in this state. It'll be national. You'll see everything. In fact, I've come up with a great name if we have to go, because I am an animal lover, and I love all animals and all species, and I think that using an animal is actually a negative piece as well. And I'm going to say it, and everyone says, "Oh, that's not." It's the truth. I think the use of animals or birds or owls, it's disgusting to be doing that, because if that's the case, and we're gonna make it, I came up with the Middleborough inertia, because we have to have the most we can't make it so that we have to have a name that it's not going to offend anyone, and that's where we are at this point. Now, I do have empathy for anyone and everyone, and I always, when someone ever says to me, "You should have empathy," what you're saying is I don't. Well, I do. And I've been to powwows. I've worked hand in hand with people, and I know what is going on, and I think it's disgusting what people do. I've said all along, the Red Raiders of Quincy was a horrible, horrible thing. The Redskins, the Wahoo of the Cleveland Indians, that was the name of their mascot. It's disgusting. But when I look at what we do here in Middleborough, it is completely different. It is not a derogatory piece. We do it with pride. And when someone says, do you know what it means? I do know what it means. I've been in that school. I've been to graduation. I have a student. My son would have been here tonight if he wasn't working, talking about how he went from never playing a sport because he didn't like sports to now being, this year as a senior, he's going to be a captain on the cross-country team, and he is going to be a leader. And he's used that, and he has that sachem pride, and he takes incredible pride in that. And he knows what it means. He's been to these events, and he respects what that means. And to turn around and say the status quo, it's not the status quo. It is an honor. I think it's an honor. And 6 years ago, it really took traction. This bill took traction 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago at this point. And I said right out, the first thing I do is change the flag in the Commonwealth, because the sword of Damocles is coming down upon the Grand Sachem that is on our flag. And people are like, oh, that'll never happen. Well, there's talk about that too right now too. So they should be doing that as well, because I think that was always a disgrace. I work in Braintree. They have that same hand on their logo. That's going to have to change too, even though the sachem's not on it, but the sword is, which is the connotation. By the way, they're the Womps, so they're going to be changing their name if this bill passes or passes in the next 10 years. But I sit back and say, what this bill was really put there for and what we have in Middleborough are just two totally different things. As far as the legislation, it's horrible. Absolutely horrible. If it was written in a proper way, I think it would be fun. I wouldn't have a problem with it. I really wouldn't have a problem with it. But I don't think it's proper. I don't think it's funded. I don't think what they're allowing for the respect that can be granted and given. And this isn't about an athletic. On here it says athletic team name and logo, and in there it really specifically talks about it in the legislation. It isn't though. It is what our school is. As far as changing names, I agree. I agree with everyone online that said every name would have to change, because you don't just start with one, it's everything. We're going to have to do that. I've got Massasoit Community College, I got the Nemasket River. Massasoit, which really wasn't truly the right naming of it, but that's okay. But the Nemasket River for the Wampanoags that lived here in this community, that resided, which is what used to be JMR Turkey Farm, one of the oldest and best kept historic pieces in Massachusetts. So, and the town is working diligently to actually protect that. I mean, they've got grant money and everything. So when I think about what we in this town can respect and talk about, this is it. I think that the Sachem name it's not just a name. It's more than. And I couldn't agree more with what you said, Ms. Willard, about the education, because when you made the comment about the Pilgrims inviting, how about the Native Americans saved the Pilgrims? Because there would be no one there if it wasn't for the Native Americans saving them that first year, in the second. But I think that that education piece absolutely is a piece that should be incorporated in our community more and more. And there have been several Native Americans brought into our classrooms and have taught in our classroom, not to mention the ones that actually live within our community that belong to these tribes, that still live in this community. So my thought is, although my concern is financially, I think there's more to it than just even financially. And I would support you at this time talking with our legislators. I'm going to talk to my legislators as well. I talk to them regularly, and I've already mentioned both of to two of them about this bill, and they both said the same thing. They're not really in support of it, but you never know how the vote actually gets taken. And my concern is, as yours is, Rich, when they're not in an official session, anything can happen unless one person objects. And typically there's one from the opposing party always objecting every day.
Absolutely.
But I would definitely be in support of you going up there and working with our legislators against this bill, but maybe think what we can do culturally that would be. I always hate identifying a problem, making it a huge problem, and then just wiping it out, instead of finding a solution to that little problem. Let's make it better. And that's what I keep thinking to myself is, how can we make this a better solution for everybody? I don't want to wipe out the Native Americans in our schools, which is what this legislation does. It actually does that. Physically will do that. Mascots, everything, they get wiped out. Once again, the Massachusetts legislature would actually wipe out Native Americans as much as they could. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. That's just how I feel. I'm just one person.
You had something that you wanted to say, so I want to give you the opportunity.
Keith Gerard, I have 3 children in the school system. Definitely appreciate hearing both sides of this, and also appreciate that this bill is very vaguely worded. But I'm curious because I've heard some arguments against, which again I'm happy to have heard, but it sounds like all the arguments against really talk about the mascot position, and I'm wondering if this committee has a distinction between mascot versus name. Because it seems to me that the mascot and the caricature angle could be considered way more offensive. And this logo that has the feathers, I don't know how that falls into there. So I'm curious just if this committee sees it that way or says no, because it has any kind of Native American heritage in the name, it now gets lumped into that same kind of offensive language.
As I understand the bill, just to be clear, Melrose High School has the exact same logo that we do. As I said, Greg had sent me the link to the place that he read from earlier today, and it lists all the logos. Now, when the logo originally came out, our logo was the old logo with the picture of the Native American.
Sure.
But Melrose's logo has not changed. So they viewed Melrose's logo as offensive too.
Okay.
So it's the exact same one that we have now.
And it's
So
this
under the term of the bill, I believe that both the logo and the name would have to change.
So not taking a specific side on this, I would definitely say, just along the lines of this bill being so vague, I would hope that we push to go against it, if for only the reason to get, to not have other future bills passed that are so vaguely worded that they can have outcomes without being thought through. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Specific to one of those other questions, when you talked about the logo versus the name, it specifically says any uniforms includes or bears the prohibited team name, comma, logo, or mascot. It even goes on further to say that the school has to refrain from purchasing or acquiring for the purpose of distribution, the sale of to pupils or school employees any yearbook, newspaper, program, or similar materials that bears the prohibited school or athletic team name, logo, or mascot, or its logos or titles.
Correct.
So pretty much you can't even use the word Sachem. You wouldn't be able to use the word Sachem. You couldn't have the word Sachem in your yearbook anywhere. And it's pretty straightforward. You can't say anything about it.
So that's part of what I mean, which is, you could start a year having every team name the Sachems, because that was the team name, when the legislation passed. But as you are correct, nowhere in the yearbook
Photographs
could the word Sachem be used. So again, this is the piece that I have that is, in my mind, fundamentally flawed together as a whole. Especially, please come down.
Add to the discussion points.
Dropping the mic
That doesn't
already,
help
Mr. Pisley?
It's another expense on top of changing. So a couple discussion points. I went on the website Mr. Stevens talked about earlier, and it seems like some of the genesis of this at the beginning of going back on these logos, and they have an excellent video on there, by the way, about what they are typically called. They're called leaders. They're called wives, husbands, children. Really well done video. Part of the genesis was a leveraging these logos, mascots, team names, particularly in athletics, to make billions of dollars, to leverage that in a financial way. That's a piece to that. One of the reasons it's being fought against, using that to make money off the backs of those who have been affected by this. That is not what we're doing in the schools at all. When we have team names and logos, it really doesn't have anything to do with making money on it. So that's an important distinction, I think, in that legislation. We're not doing that. There's something else I've read in news reports. There's a carve-out language for tribes to say it's okay to use this. However, I don't think sachems would fit into that. And I'm not someone that knows the legalese very well, but when you read it, I don't think that carve-out would apply to us because it's not a tribe name. It's not anything to do with that. So I think that provision is not a way out of this for us. I could be wrong, but just to point that out.
Mr. Chair, that's the last provision, and it does talk about it, but it's only for their own schools within the Commonwealth. So
Yeah.
if the Mashpee Wampanoag and their place, their reservation, it's in question mark, but their reservation down in Mashpee were to have a school, which they do have a small school, they could utilize their own names if they wanted to, but they wouldn't even be able to give permission to us if we asked for it.
Right.
It's not allowed at all. They don't have, the carve-out is only specific to tribes that are recognized by the Commonwealth Bureau of Indian Affairs.
And I think that, the bill doesn't differentiate, but I think when we look at our own logo, for us now in Middleborough, it's a real logo. We don't have a mascot. We don't have any person dressed up in anything running around as a mascot, making a caricature or doing anything like that. This is it. This is what you see. That's what it is. The rest of it is all around how do we develop our students to be leaders. And I absolutely 100% agree, and I've said this to a number of people, that the education piece is and I said this to Mr. Brannigan, this is a great area for growth. We're in an area where Massasoit and all these things around, there's so much to learn. I think it's a little bit unfair to say that our whitewashed history lessons, that's something that's been changing and evolving countrywide. That's not a Middleborough thing. I think that's evolving in all of education, the way we approach those things. But I do agree that education is an important part of that, and I think we can do a better job with that. I would hate to see us just throw it out. This is a local issue, in my opinion. This is between our community, what is best in this community, and I think that I think that's an important part. Conversations with those native tribes to this area would be helpful in that discussion. So just wanted to throw those little things out there.
Other comments or questions? Mr. Oak.
Mr. Chair, I just wondered if there was a specific point in time that if we thought that this was going to pass in this session, when it would actually happen?
No, I mean, to be honest with you, their session will end probably some point in December. But to be honest with you, they don't have a budget yet, right, Brian?
I thought they had a compromise.
They do, but they don't have a budget.
They don't have a budget yet.
So budget.
They still have budget hearings.
So they still have budget hearings going on. So the focus is on budget, and then they take a recess and a break, and then they go from there. But if there's no budget, sessions are still going, and anything can come up at any time. So I don't have an answer for that, other than usually their session ends in December.
Okay. Thanks.
No problem. But again, more than likely, in the next, right after the next set of elections, somebody else will probably refile a similar bill. Just happens. A lot of these bills are just ready to go. Just get refiled automatic. But no vote has been scheduled or anything like that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Has the logo been put on the field yet? I'm trying to see it.
Through you, Mr. Chair?
Please.
The logo in the center of the field was one that was sort of centrist to the town, as a community field, as opposed to the high school specifically. So the varsity M, which you see up on the top left, with the sort of squared off with the black outline with the white inset and the orange, that is the M that's on the center of the football field, representing the community of Middleborough. So.
Good.
Yes.
That's not an issue.
That was something that myself, the athletic director, and the high school principal urged the designers to do at this point. Not with the every student, every classroom, every day, the branding of the district, just the M, which is technically the varsity M. When a student gets a varsity letter at Middleborough High School, that is the M that they receive, that black outline, white inset, and orange body. So that is the varsity letter that's in the center of at the turf field, being put down, not as we speak, but a couple hours ago.
Mr. Oakley again.
Follow up. I know there's a ton of paperwork, a ton of literature and for lack of a better term, marketing pieces for the school and the yearbook and all this stuff. But what would be the biggest ticket item that would be affected if we were forced to change the team name from Sachems to something else?
Uniforms.
It would be uniforms.
Uniforms.
Okay. Got it.
The volume of the uniforms we'd have to
Got it.
pay for.
Band uniforms, graphics
Do we
throughout
have-
the building.
do we have the M on-
graphics throughout the building, graphics and outside, screen graphics.
For softball, baseball, such that the stadium graphics in terms of Sachem branding, that sort of thing.
There'll still be the M in other places in the stadium, not necessarily on the turf, but in other places.
Got it. Thanks.
I believe Center Court at the new gymnasium would have the high school setting right now
Okay.
as we move forward.
Also along the wall too, correct?
Yes,
Right.
yeah. That sort of branding that's throughout the building.
Yeah. So the branding's at various places. So between the branding and the uniforms would be the two biggest pieces. Other questions or concerns? Greg? Okay, I wasn't sure with the hand. No. Anyone else wish to say anything? Okay, so I put the motion, I put the, on the vote, if no one objects, to allow me to fight the legislation that's currently up at the Hill. Yes.
I'd like to first make a motion that, as a school committee, we do not support House Bill 443 and Senate Bill 247 as written.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I'm going to ask for a roll call vote. Just
Sure, that's fine.
you want.
Discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Oakley? Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
The chair votes aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I would move that we authorize you to lobby on the behalf of the Middleborough School District against House Bill 443 and Senate Bill 247, with the understanding that it was not a unanimous vote.
I would tell them that. That would be okay. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. The ayes have it.
And then, Mr. Chair, I would move that we forward a letter to our legislators, His Excellency the Governor and Lieutenant Governor, with our discussion, kind of a synopsis of our discussion, and I would like to include the correspondence, all correspondence, including everything we received tonight, if we could,
Sure.
as a packet.
Sure, I don't see that problem.
Including
Yeah, I mean,
emails.
include
Yes,
emails
yes.
and stuff too, that's not a problem. I'll put it together and let
Thank
everyone
you.
know. I don't think you need to vote on it, just because I can do that through your last, Bill, your last vote, so that's fine. Any other questions? Anybody have a question about that at all? Just making sure. Seeing none. Then I'm going to move on with my agenda to the superintendent's report. Mr. Lynch.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, members of the audience, we'll move on with the agenda on the superintendent's report. The first is the Sachem Pride Alumni Foundation. They have asked me respectfully to spread the word about the Alumni Bash. It's a fundraiser on September 28, 2019, at Middleborough High School, and they're looking for publicity there. They're also looking for any type of raffle prizes from the community. If anyone wants to get involved in that, the Alumni Bash, September 28, 2019, Sachem Pride Alumni Foundation, they can reach out to Mr. Brannigan at p.brannigan@middleborough.k12.ma.us if interested, and thank you. We next, on my report, have a facility summer project, and I'd invite Mr. James Hutchinson up to the table to just give a report on the multitude of projects that are going on this summer in the Middleborough Public Schools. Hutch, welcome.
Hello there, thank you. Just to go over some of the projects that are completed, but I'll go through them all real quick. With the MEC, the gym floor, we're gonna sand that down to the bare wood, which we did at the Berkland about 3 years ago. And the lines get painted over, and then every season they'll come in and sand and do one coat on there, and it really brightens up that area. It's a nice job. The stage, they'll also come in and do the auditorium stage, just screen it and apply one coat of urethane. Playground fencing, we're gonna, the Parks is gonna take some of the area in the 4 tennis courts there, and they're gonna utilize it for their skate park. So we're gonna put a dividing fence, we haven't decided yet as to where, but to separate those two. Because obviously our children are out there, and that park is open to the public at all times, so we wanna separate the kids from someone that may be in there. And then the preschool playground, which is on the back side of the gym, which has the playground, certified playground chips. We top coat that every year, so we'll be doing that again. We just got 100 yards delivered last Friday. At the Berkland, the gymnasium floor, auditorium stage, those have already been done. They were done 2 weeks ago, and so they're ready to go. We had a chair program in there this week, practicing. So those are all set for the school year coming up. Outside stairs on the back end of the Lawler, where the basketball is, it's the old style railroad ties, and they're off limits as of right now. So we're gonna remove those and install new timbers in there, so, because those stairs have been out of service for quite a while. On the back side of the playground at the Berkland, it's all, for the most part, a parking lot. So we have approximately 7,000 square feet that we're gonna remove the asphalt and put grass in there. We've had a number of injuries with the kids, and unlike Mary Kay Good, they don't have a large grass area for them to go out to, so they're kind of digging in the dirt and out on the pavement. So that'll be a big plus for those kids when they come back. And their playground also will get topped with those certified playground chips. Mary Kay Good. As you come in the right side, which is the Callahan wing, we've had an issue with drainage there. When it rains, it settles and it's starting to undermine the pavement. So we're gonna have a local contractor come in there. He's gonna take a drain, gravel, remove the material that's there, put gravel and a pipe in. He'll bring it towards the backside of the playground, and then it'll go off by gravity. So right now it just sits, we still have rain sitting there from last week's storm. So that there is gonna get done probably in the next week, because we have a sizable asphalt project. We received capital money, $120,000. So that parking lot program will be, change will be due probably the 3rd week of August. So I met with Chris Peck and Dave, a representative from PJ Keating, and they're gonna give us a spreadsheet basically that'll tell us how far that money will go. We may add to that money to go even further. We'll see what that ends up being, so. Also on that side, that Callahan side, there was a section that approximately 1,000 feet where they used to park the mini school buses. And 2 winters ago, it collapsed on us, so it's kind of been off limits. So we've taken that pavement out of there as well, and we'll make it a grassed area. So the after-school program will use that area a lot. Now it'll be grass as opposed to pavement, so. And also, they have 2 playgrounds there. We'll have those topped off with the certified chips. I have 2 more of the bottle filling stations to go in, cafeteria and the Callahan wing, and that'll bring the total up to 6, which MKG PTA has purchased 4 of the 6. Here at the Nichols, we're doing another cluster, removing the carpet, putting in the VCT tile, and that's the 6th grade B cluster. So we have 9 clusters in total. That'll leave 2 more that we need to do. We have a sizable electrical project going on right now for the bus loop lighting and the parking lot lighting. So the original conduits were basically laid in clay. So when we had a heavy rain event, it would sit in clay. So our electrician has dug out the area where the handhole is and dug down 4 feet, put gravel in and put a wick off of it. So when it does rain, those wires don't sit in water, which in turn trip the breakers down below. So that's been an ongoing problem. And we have chairs. Sarah purchased 300 chairs for this school. The old chairs are the rail style chairs because all the classrooms were carpeted. But with the VCT Floor Program, those now mark up, they scratch the floors. So We purchased 300 chairs with the appropriate glides on them, so that we're now changing those out. So 300 of the classroom chairs will be replaced. They're actually on site and they're doing that now. Had just this last week, we've had 2 of the bubblers go down in this school, and rather replace a 20-year, or try to find parts for a 20-year-old bubbler, I'm gonna go and change them to the bottle filling stations. One's right out here by the gym, and one, I believe, is 6th grade, A cluster. So it doesn't make any sense. Both of them are the coils on the condensers. It doesn't make any sense to replace that part. We can just put a new bubbler in there, so. A couple things for the district. We have a full slate of interns this year. It's nice. We've only got 2 new ones, I believe, and it's nice to have the experienced kids back because they really, you can see it. They work hand in hand with the custodians. The custodian strips the floor, the guy's right on a wet vac, and it really has been a big help this year. Our groundskeeper, who last year had to cover for one of our custodians, has been able to work strictly grounds, so he's been having the kids with him doing some grounds around the district. The rain and then the excessive heat has kind of slowed them down a little bit, but air quality testing we did in every school, and we do that twice a year. We did it in June at all the schools. We pick the bigger areas, the auditoriums, the cafeterias. We have to do them when the kids are in school, and then we pick a random classroom on each floor. And then those all came back and everything was fine. School Street School, we have quiet spaces that we're adding over there. We added 2 in the hallway and 2 in classrooms, 1st and 2nd floor. And we're also redoing the bathroom floors there at both faculty bathrooms. Lincoln Lynch School, we're converting a classroom over to an enrollment center. They're kind of changing their program over there a little bit. We're giving a new space in there. So painting, flooring, we've had some electrical changes in there. We're working on that this week, actually. And then the basement floors at LDL, we're putting an epoxy on there. They're just basically a porch paint on that floor right now. So we're going to go in there, scrape it down, and put an epoxy on that floor. A couple of grants. We did receive a $50,000 safety grant, and it's going to be specifically for this building for cameras. We can place outside the bathrooms on each floor. So that grant has been approved, and we're going to get ready to go out to bid for that. And we also have a Department of Energy grant that we haven't got approval yet for, but it seems like we're going to be okay with that. It's $247,000. It'll be for LED lighting in this school, and then this school and the MEC for the building management systems to upgrade those 2 systems. I spoke with Andrew at the town hall today. It sounds like it's been delayed. The approval has been delayed, but today they asked him what projects we were going to do, so that sounded like a positive thing that we were going forward with that. So that's it for right now.
Touch clear that although the high school is not on your list, doesn't mean things aren't being done at the high school.
Yeah, we're there. Yeah, no, the high school still, one of the nice pieces of the floor program that they have now is we're doing, or I say we, the custodians and the interns are doing a substantial amount of painting. So there is an intern at every school who we've determined over the few years we've had them are better painters than others. They stay within the line. There's one at each school and there's one at the high school. So, but in this school here, they'll probably paint upwards of a dozen classrooms. So those teachers come back, their floors look like new, their classrooms are painted, and there's detail cleaning, filters, and so, yeah, we're still maintaining that high school. Yep.
Meg. Do we have a date where we can go and we can see the schools like we did last summer?
Yeah, we usually do that at the August meeting. The superintendent will say what we'll do a walkthrough.
Yeah.
And that'll be fun.
Okay.
We always do that.
Yep, if we can go towards like the 3rd week of August, we should have the pavement done. The other processes, the other programs, we should be done for the most part, all of them, so. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Oak.
Thanks for the presentation. I was wondering, I was just curious, what is the VCT Floor Program?
So the VCT, which is a vinyl tile that we have in most all of our schools, the 12 by 12 tiles, it's not a ceramic tile, but they're in the classroom. So this school had carpeted classrooms, and it's 20-year-old, roughly 20-year-old carpet. So we're removing it and putting that tile in. So the program, the old school way of doing it, and not that it was wrong, it's just how it was done back then, you would strip the floor, and then you would put 8 coats of wax down, and then go back the next summer and you'd strip the floor and put 8 coats of wax down. So because the quality of the wax is better now, it's somewhat labor intensive to get the floors stripped right down to the original. Then they put 3 coats of wax on, and they maintain, for example, the cafeteria here hasn't been stripped in 4 years. So because that program, that's a very labor intensive job to strip it, wax it, what have you. Now through the school year, they buff those floors and they maintain that surface. So instead of having 2 guys strip a classroom all day, they're painting a classroom or they're outside doing grounds. So through professional development, they've learned a better way to do it. The product is a better product, and it saves a ton of time for the custodians. So
Sounds good. Yeah. Mr. Chair, if it's okay, I just had 2 more quick ones. The interns that you get,
Yep.
Are they students from within the Middleborough School District?
they're all
or?
Middleborough kids, yep.
That's great.
Our oldest is a junior at Mass Maritime, but they come back every year, except for maybe 2 who this year are doing internships in their major. But the majority of them come back every year. We do actually have 3 new ones this year. Our Eagle Scout, who did the project out front here, is one.
Sure.
And a brother of a boy who's here. We do have 2 interns who have business majors, and they work with Sarah every week, and at least on Mondays, and they also do the courier piece for us on Mondays and Fridays. So they're required to do 120 hours of business-based intern. So Sarah helps out with that. Next week, they're going to work with Rebecca on some of her things. So
That sounds great.
yeah,
it's a good experience
for them, and they can a little bit of variety there. They may be weed whacking on Tuesday and working with Sarah on Wednesday. So.
That's great.
And they're all minimum wage. Yeah.
Yep.
So all paid interns. Yeah.
Great. And then my last one. What does a quiet space mean when you talk about the school street?
So at the school street, and we have them also at the Berkeley and the Mary Kay Good. So if a student is maybe a little out of hand, they'll take them outside and just put them in a space that they can calm down so they're not disrupting the classroom. At School Street, they were all in the classroom. It was working against what the teachers were trying to do there, because in the corner of the classroom, they had a student who was having a tough day, let's say. So we've now located them outside the class. We have limited space at School Street, but we were able to locate one on the first floor and one on the second floor to take that outside away from the classroom setting. So
Got it.
We've added two inside and 2 outside. So it's not, sometimes it's just a case of the student sitting there and reading a book or what have you, but sometimes it's a little more than that, and that can be disruptive for the students.
Got it.
Rich, that has to be safe.
Yep.
And so, there's no electrical outlet in those spaces, things like that. And so if a child's out of control and goes there, they can go there and decompress and not have to worry about, hurting themselves in some way, shape, or form.
Got it. Cool.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do lease the School Street School to the Reeds Collaborative, and it is a therapeutic day program. So they are in a more restrictive environment, if you will, and those are children who have had some difficulties calming down, so those are calming spaces.
Got it. Important. Cool. Thanks very much. It's great to see all the stuff that's going on, keeping things going, and I love hearing about that internship program. I didn't realize exactly how that worked, but it sounds like a great opportunity.
Yeah, so we had it a number of years ago, and then it kind of fell off the wayside for a little bit, so we brought it back either 3 or 4 years ago. We started with 7, we're up to 9 now, but 9 is kind of the max because we have to find a space for all of them. Some days you don't need 3 interns at one location, so they do float around. We have a couple that stay in one location, like the 2 that are here stay here. But I have the kids that work with Sarah and myself, I have a little more flexibility with them, so I can send them if custodian needs an extra set of hands moving furniture and what have you. So they're a big help when it comes to emptying classrooms, and then because it takes that away from the custodian so they can concentrate on their job, and the kids can move the chairs, move the tables, and then once they're done, they're right back in. But with the group we have that have been here for so long, they're 18, 19, 20 years old, we can put them on a buffer, which is time, it takes time, and it's something that a custodian can move on to another project where they can take the buffer. It seems somewhat mindless, but it has to get done in order to harden that top coat of wax to where it's nice and hard for the furniture to slide on. We now have kids who have experience, and they jump right on. It's great.
Sure.
So they're a huge help.
And Mr. Chair, I just would like the record to show that Mr. Hutchinson used the term old school literally earlier without cracking a smile. All right, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. Yep.
Fantastic
Great
job.
job, yeah.
And they do, the schools look great.
Yep.
And it's because of you guys. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson.
And now my report, Mr. Chair, I called down Dr. Melanie Gates to give us a little bit of an update on what's going on right now in the summer. We've heard from her previous meeting, and she talked about those things that were proposed to be going on in the summer. Now she's just going to report out briefly, I think, on those things that are actually going on and happening in the school system.
Thank you, Superintendent Lynch and school committee members. Just a bit of an update from my last presentation back in June. This is a copy of the slide that I did feature about our summer projects that are currently going on, and I'm highlighting 2 additions to it, and I really should have had a third. But with the numerous curriculum projects that are going on, one of them being the development of the science curriculum units at the elementary level, we will be supporting the development of the curriculum also with a full-day professional development session on August 19th with Discovery Education, who we subscribe to them for a program called Streaming Plus, but also their science tech book. So our elementary teachers will be able to take their written curriculum and explore tech book more intentionally so that we're able to achieve the learning outcomes as designed in our curriculum. The other addition that I neglected to mention in my presentation in June is with the work with special education through collaboration with Mrs. Carolyn Lyons and really all of the team facilitators, but primarily Mrs. Jennifer Healy, the special education coordinator for the high school, and Mrs. Kimberly Redlawn at MKG. We came up with this idea of being able to map out the academic, social, life, leisure, and vocational skills that are supported in our pre-K through 12 substantially separate programs, just to ensure that we are building upon the skills of our students within those programs year after year, and perhaps finding additional opportunities to enhance the experience for our students within those particular programs. So that's some exciting work that we'll be taking on within the special education department, and it's nice collaboration between the curriculum department, which is all of the curriculum for the district, but including special education and their expertise for what our students need in those programs. We've had a lot of work going on, a lot of communication with teachers over the summer. Our teachers are working hard. We've got numerous teachers working on curriculum projects, as you see listed here. Last week, there was 3 or 4 days where we had most of the middle school math department in, working with Vicki Miles on our homegrown middle school math curriculum, and they've made some tremendous progress. Really proud of the work that they've done. Really focused in on refining our curriculum and meeting the deadline that MCAS imposes upon us, which is much earlier in the school year. It's not at the end of the school year as one might think. And taking into account the rotating schedule that the middle school has, knowing that once in every 7 days we lose a math class, we really have about 120 days of math instruction to prepare our students at the middle school level to succeed at MCAS. And with Mrs. Miles' expertise in math curriculum assessment and more, she's really been able to help our middle school team focus in on the essential understandings that we want our students to have in a way that is not just prepping for the test. It's really deep conceptual understandings that will not only prepare them for MCAS, but prepare them for success at the high school level. Another big piece that occurs in the summer, as you know, is our Staff Strong program, which is our 3-day orientation program for our new hires. Just the graphic that's there, being a new teacher is like trying to fly an airplane while building it. And we want to be able to ensure that we prepare our teachers to be successful in their first year, because every day counts for every student in our district, regardless of the years of service that a teacher has. And we want them to understand what it means to teach in the Middleborough Public Schools and support our community. So that is an important program coming up on August 20th through the 22nd. The agenda has not changed much from prior years. There are some enhancements to align to the expectations in our strategy for continuous district improvement, particularly in the area of social emotional learning. With Mr. Lynch's leadership, we've really taken that on. This past school year, we already had a full-day professional development as a leadership team on June 19th, where we're making sure that all of our administrators understand what social and emotional learning is about and how to support it as leaders across the district. And that will be embedded into this program so that our new teachers are starting off as strong as they can. I chose a quote from Colin Powell, who actually was the chief of the Joint Staffs when I was in the Army, and he actually showed up at Fort Jackson when I was in basic training on the range and was giving out his challenge coins, but I was actually in a foxhole shooting down range, so I didn't get to get a challenge coin, but it was cool that I got to see him with my own 2 eyes. And just to reiterate the whole part of really what Staff Strong is about, is to instill that there are no secrets with success. It's a result of preparation, hard work, and learning from failure. That we need to prepare our new teachers to be as successful as possible, instill in them the hard work that we expect not only out of our teachers every day, but out of our students and all our staff. And that for us, we need to model the same attitude towards learning that we want our students to have. There's never such thing as a failure. Fail just means first attempt in learning, and if we can practice that within our own day-to-day roles as educators, then our students can be inspired from our own practice. Just wanted to share a little bit about the professional development coming up for this coming school year. At the secondary level, the major themes are represented here. School safety is always a theme, regardless of what level of school you're at, but the secondary level will be starting out on the 3rd day with staff with their DIRT training through Mr. Dizell and the DIRT team. We will also have an opportunity to launch a program that we're really excited for with Character Strong. We have Character Strong curriculum that will be embedded throughout the district, but the secondary level will have a much more focused opportunity with an advisory program that's coming on board. And we will have a full day PD with Character Strong on August 28th. And Mr. Lynch and I did have the opportunity to participate in training with Character Strong, and I think we both agree that it was some of the best PD we've both experienced. So we're excited to bring that forward for the secondary level and for the district as a whole. Also at the secondary level, the work on school culture is something that needs to be attended to daily. And with Mr. Thomas here at the middle school entering into his 2nd year as principal and having actually time to prepare for the school year, that's really a focus of his, is just refining the school culture here at the middle school. And that's going to be some multifaceted work that he'll be undertaking with the team here at the Nichols, and that's going to be really exciting. And as attested to through Mr. Brannigan's letter, school culture is something that's very vibrant at the high school, but it's something that you just don't let sit. It's something that he attends to and grows year after year, and that's something that he does throughout professional development, PLCs, faculty meetings, and his daily engagement with students. The graphic that you see on the far right is about personalized learning. This is from the Future Ready Schools Network. Personalized learning is something that is a focus throughout the district because we need to be able to meet our students where they're at and promote individual success for all students. But the high school is really taking a keen look at personalized student learning. They've been working on this for years in terms of the leveling of courses and what that expectation means, and it's helped us evolve to really think about the education that we're delivering our students. So much work will be done in that area of how do we personalize learning for all students, whether it's through the pathways we've created with Project Lead the Way or the opportunities with Massasoit Community College, just making sure that we're providing what it is that all our students need to be successful. And then at the high school, NEASC is always there, but the accreditation, the site visit, I think is in 2024, but the work leading up to the site visit needs to begin now. And one of the big tasks that the high school will be undertaking is working on the profile of a graduate, that it helps us envision what it is that we want our students to achieve upon graduating, not just in terms of academic skills, but what type of people we are helping them become, what knowledge and skills have they acquired, and their mindset towards learning throughout their life. And that's going to be important work that's just not really at the high school level. That's really incumbent upon the district of supporting what we want for our profile of a graduate. Just at the elementary level, just some basic themes of the professional development in the coming year. We will be continuing with the literacy initiative through our partnership with the Literacy Collaborative out of Lesley University. That is that book in the middle, the Literacy Continuum. It's probably about a good 3-4 inch thick book that unpacks the skills that we want students to acquire from K through 8th grade in the realm of reading, writing, listening, speaking. And I think we're entering into our 3rd year of work with this, and it has certainly been paying off. We've had numerous visits into the elementary classrooms to see how literacy instruction has evolved. And I would say for me, the biggest piece for me is just being able to see the students really engaged in their learning in an organic way for them, where they're enjoying reading, they're enjoying writing, and I think it's really empowering them as learners, not just in the literacy realm, but just overall. Coupled with that will be some author visits that our students will get to experience, but also the authors will be working with staff to help them understand what it is like to be a writer and what that writing process is. That's something that's shared with the students, but then it's also refined with the teachers through professional development. And those author visits typically occur, I believe, on half days, so that the kids get some experience with the author, and then it's followed up with professional development in the afternoon. We've had Ralph Fletcher, who's a local author, I believe, out of Marshfield, for several years now, and I know he'll be coming back along with a couple other authors. I think one specializes in poetry, so that will be a nice experience for our kids. The elementary will also have their DIRT training. And social emotional learning is something that is also attended to at the elementary level. That's something that, particularly at the Berkland, they've been working on a lot with their Superflex curriculum, as well as social thinking, and that is something that's expanding out throughout the entire elementary. And the gift that you see on the right-hand side there, that's from ST Math. We were able to acquire ST Math through a grant. And we will be continuing professional development with our teachers on understanding the benefits that ST Math provides for our students. ST standing for spatial and temporal, allows our students to look at symbols, interact with them, manipulate them, make sense of them, and it really deepens their higher order thinking skills to empower them to be problem solvers in math. So you can just see an example of a puzzle that's given to kids where there's no directions on this is what you do to solve the puzzle. They have to figure it out on their own, which helps build their perseverance, which is important, but helps them get a deeper conceptual understanding. In this case, it's working with fractions on a number line. So that I think is a really cool program. The kids get kind of excited about Gigi, which is the little penguin. I think we had Gigi visit back in the spring. That was really exciting, and I hope Gigi comes back to visit us yet again. And that's my quick thumbnail sketch of some work that's going on this summer and some exciting things that we have coming in the 2019-20 school year. Happy to answer any questions you might have. Well, I thank you all.
Absolutely, but thank you very much, because we
Yes.
appreciate all the work you do, especially during the summertime, to get ready to move forward. I think it would be helpful if you could let us know when those author visits are, so maybe people could have the opportunity to stop by and just see what was going on. I think that might be helpful.
Yes, sure thing. They already have the dates planned out, so I'll take a seat and email them
Thank you.
to you all.
That'd be great.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Gates.
Thank you, Dr. Gates. We appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, my number 4 and 5 both involve Ms. Sarah Hickey, so she's going to report out on the next 2 items on the agenda.
Thank you. On July 10th, the new vendor for the before and after school child care program, Champions, came and did an open house. They were here, they were at the elementary complex, and they had a program that ran from 5 to 7. I was at the school building committee meeting from 5 to 6, but 6 to 7, I raced over and found that they didn't have the flavor of ice cream that I preferred. But the room was packed. There were probably, well, they did ice cream sundaes. They did activities with the students that were similar to activities that they would do daily in the program. And then after the activity session, there was a question and answer for the parents, and that's where I arrived. And kids were still building things with popsicle sticks and constructing things of the arts and crafts nature, while the families, the parent guardians, were asking particular questions that they had of the program. And it was a very well-attended night. I think I counted on the sign-in sheet, there were 40 people that had put in an email address signing up for the door prize. And it seemed to be a happy night, and I recall that there was one young gentleman who didn't want to go and didn't want to go and didn't want to go. And so one child was the last one out. So I hope that's encouraging of how things are going to go with that student in that program after school. Any questions about the open house? Yes.
Mr. Chair. I just want to comment, I attended the last half hour of that, and I was impressed by their organization, the different tables, I think it was simulating what it would be like on their program on any given day. And the thing that I really liked about their process was they were talking to the parents, and I overheard one discussion about homework, and parents have very different views on homework. Some parents get the homework done before the kid leaves. Other parents don't do any homework. I want to help them with homework. So what they do is they sign a contract with every parent, and the parent tells them, here's exactly what I want this kid to be doing. So I think the communication seems very open and upfront, and I thought the stations were the elementary school level, but I mean, it was pretty wide variety of activities that the children could do. So I was pretty happy with what I saw.
Mr. Chair, the next item on the agenda is the Transportation Administration, and specifically Specialized Transportation Administration. In Sarah's first year, she's had an opportunity to do a sort of an overall evaluation of the program as it is, taking input from those who have experienced it in the past, including myself with my first few years here in the district. And she has some recommendations in terms of a program or a sort of the administration that needs an overhaul, if you will, and she'll describe that to you now. Thank you.
Thank you. So I sent a letter that you received. What it outlines is that we currently have a full-time coordinator of specialized transportation, and the coordinator works 7:30 in the morning to 2:30 in the afternoon, or 6:30 to 1:30. Sometimes she's driving, but there's always a piece of the day where there's not somebody there. And so what I designed, the new model that I proposed, is instead of a full-time coordinator of transportation, it would be 2 dispatchers to man the radios and do the communications with the bus drivers and the schools and the families. And they would have shifts in the morning and in the afternoon, bookending a transportation supervisor in the middle of the day. All 3 positions would be part-time positions. So the shift for the dispatcher would be a 3-hour shift in the morning. There'd be a 4-hour shift with the transportation supervisor, and then another 3-hour shift with a dispatcher. And that gives us complete coverage of all of the time when our special ed students would be in vehicles, and then it would have the time in the middle of the day with the specialized transportation supervisor to coordinate bus routes, do training with drivers, and work on the maintenance of vehicles, all of that stuff, the supervisory piece.
And parent relations, which are so important, parent-guardian relationships.
This type of a change would be revenue neutral?
It has it's either revenue neutral or it has a potential for savings, depending on whether the 20-hour-a-week transportation supervisor would need benefit, they would be eligible for benefits. So depending on whether they needed benefits or not.
Would this enable, if there were time off, vacation time, et cetera, for a person who may work the morning shift but not the afternoon, for the afternoon to maybe work a little bit more to cover that shift, or maybe sick time? I'm just trying to think of these things. Is that kind of that overlap kind of?
Well, with the 15 hours a week, you wouldn't accrue vacation time.
Okay.
Those dispatchers would just be for the 184 school days plus the 6 weeks of extended school year. So those people in those positions would have the Christmas break, the February break, the April break, a time in June and time in August where there wouldn't be any kids in school.
But if they were sick, we'd almost be able to ask one of those other people to come in and cover, which if we currently have
Yes.
one person doing it and that person's sick, we're
Yes.
now shifting someone.
In fact, if you look at the schedule for transportation, there's a 4-hour break between the dispatchers during the 184 school day year. But in the summertime, it's all the kids are in school at the same time. There's not a staggered start, and so it would just be the 2 shifts back to back. So if somebody wanted a Wednesday off and they said to the afternoon person, I'll do your afternoon if you do my morning.
Nice.
And they could work a 6-hour day and have a day off. So there would be some flexibility with that.
Oh, excellent.
There are advantages, through you, Mr. Chair, to having one individual being the person, but that person would be that 4-hour person during the middle of the day. But the reality is we need additional hours to make sure, because when this transportation supervisor heads home at 3:15 or 3:30 in the afternoon after a long day, we still have students on the road, and we have students on the road till almost 4:30 in some instances. So we need that office covered. We need the ability to respond in kind to any parent-guardian issue that they might have. So this is going to be an administrative reorganization within this department, and we've already spoken with the individual currently in the position, and as of this morning, I accepted her resignation.
I move that we support the reorganization of the Transportation Department. I know, Mr. Chair, I know that it's not a requirement, but I think that it's a good move.
Anyone have any questions? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Next on my agenda is employment status, and I just wanted to bring you up to speed on a couple of sort of recent losses to the district. Last Friday, I accepted resignation with regret from Stephanie Ray, current assistant, or the former assistant principal now of the John T. Nicholas Junior Middle School, and Amy Wooler, school psychologist at the Middleborough High School, who was a strong individual, and we really, really liked her in that spot. And her conversation with Mr. Brannigan was that she really had in mind her entire career was to work with younger people, younger children. So my sense is that she had perhaps a job lined up. I can't speak to that, but she perhaps had a job lined up at an elementary or middle school or somewhere where the students were younger. Those were changes. We welcomed aboard 9 individuals who I went through and personally interviewed all of them, and impressed with the pool of applicants, and they will immediately enter the teacher induction program, the 3-day Staff Strong program that Dr. Gates mentioned. They will also be assigned a mentor for 2 years and go through the mentorship program that we have within the district. And our hope is that each and every one of them works out. We also accepted with regret Mary Whitman, the head cook for a long time at the Brooklyn Elementary School. She offered or tendered her resignation also. Also wanted to point out, there was some discussion tonight about special education, about some additions, and we did have 2 additions to the special education staff this year. We added a 3rd teacher to the ages 18 through 22 program at the high school, a 3rd full-time teacher to that program, and we also added a special needs teacher at the Early Childhood Center who will do half-time special needs preschool and half-time special needs kindergarten. So that is an addition, 2 additional positions to the district. Again, 0 budget impact because they replaced 2 individuals we did not replace in other places because we didn't need to. So those positions were voiced by the administrative staff as the most, I guess, the most desired from the group of administrators, and we had consensus amongst the administrators as to those 2 positions, and those were the 2 that were brought aboard. So in addition to the ABA individuals from last week, or 2 weeks ago, sorry. So that's an employment update, if anyone has any questions. In terms of the Nichols, let me just finish that, sorry, Mr. Oakley. The Nichols Middle School, we went through an extensive interview program for the new assistant principal. Brian Harkonnen was hired, but second behind him very closely in a split vote on a recommendation was Don Rothmich, who was a 7th grade social studies teacher at this building with an administrative license and somebody who has wanted to be an administrator. Somebody, when Stephanie Ray was originally hired, the original recommendation was Don Rothmich from the principal at the time. And so now we're going to a point where I have met with Greg Thomas, the principal here. He feels strongly that he'd be the best person of the large group that he even interviewed back then. The pool gets smaller as you get further along in the summer. We've basically, through him and through his recommendation, have offered him a 3-year contract. He is currently in Brussels, Belgium, and I've been communicating back and forth with him via email. He had a couple questions on the contract. I think that was resolved today, and I anticipate a new contract with him, and then we will then post his position. My understanding is that there's a 6th grade social studies teacher who wants to be a 7th grade social studies teacher, so there'll be a domino effect, but we'll advertise for a middle school social studies teacher, and we'll get a pool of applicants, and hopefully we'll do that sooner than later, as soon as I get a signed contract via email. So that's my update. Mr. Oakley, you had a question through.
Mr. Chair, this also explains why you knew the temperature in Brussels, I suppose, earlier.
Correct.
But I had a question, though. We voted to approve a position, I don't know if it was just last meeting or the one before that, about was it the RBT?
Came through the preschool tuitions budget, yes.
And I was just curious if we had got a decent applicant pool.
We have found the right person for that job. We just have not announced that person because we haven't come to contractual terms, if you will, with that individual.
Oh, that's great. So that person
is a current employee.
Okay.
Somebody with the license and with the experience. So, and
that's
that will be the recommendation on the part of the principal and the PPS director. Strong recommendation.
So, if I could ask a follow-up, so it sounds like that person could be ready and up and running by the upcoming school year?
They will be.
Excellent.
Probably by the end of next week.
Oh.
They'll be hired anyways.
Great.
Sorry.
Seeing none.
Okay. School choice update. We currently had 5 openings at the MEC, the Early Childhood Center. We filled 3 of them, so we have 2 openings. We had 18 school choice, we had 20 school choice positions open at the elementary. We've filled 18. We have 2 spots currently open. We had 30 at the Nichols Middle School. 11 have been filled. There are 19 open. We had 30 at the high school. We filled 18, and there are 12 open. That's the current status. The question to you is, we've gone through a period. The policy calls for an open enrollment period, where people can register. We have had a number of people call and ask about school choice. Sorry they missed the window. The question to the school committee is, do you want to open a second window in August and entertain those interested applicants? So fill more of these positions and not go over with the number you've determined, but additional students.
Chair would be fine with that, except what the chair would like to do as a friendly amendment. The chair would like to keep the high school open for the year, primarily because if we close the window any child, we run into these situations more at the high school and we can deal with it as we go. But if the child moves out of district, what? Come on down.
I'm not sure the policy would allow us to do that.
Okay.
The recent policy that was approved calls for 2 open windows. Or the potential of 2 open windows.
Yes.
One open window and the potential of 2.
Yes, the policy, I think, states that we would have a second potential lottery, I think, between now and when this school year begins. But to your point, Mr. Young, of trying to keep the high school open, there is actually a provision where if you have a high school student whose family moves, we could retain the right to keep them as a student, and there is an option to send a letter to the school committee in which, the community in which the student resides, to come to some agreement on payment, or we just eat the bill ourselves. But we can actually still keep a student for, I believe, the remainder of that school year, not accepted as school choice, but we could still keep a student in Middleborough, and then the following year, if they wanted to stay in Middleborough, they would then have to apply through school choice. Yep. Mhm. Yep.
I would believe would be open it up for a 2-week period.
I think the policy states something to the effect that we would have to do the lottery, I think, within the first week of school. So we would need to have a time period to open the application, gather all the applicants, go through it and see if there are any siblings, because siblings do get preference, and then from there, look at how many are remaining. Does it fill the slots? If we go beyond the slots, then we would have to do a lottery. So we would need to close it a little bit before the deadline that the policy states for doing the lottery, just to be able to do that housekeeping. I could read the policy real quick and give you a harder.
I believe you're exactly correct.
Any other questions? Mr. O.
More just for those at home who might hear school choice, and we're all saying, yeah, no problem. We all had decent discussions on this previously, and I think I for one asked some questions about, are we comfortable with this number? And I think I got a great answer about the ratio of student teacher and all that. So this is the number that we agreed on previously, and Mr. Lynch has just reported that we're not there yet. So I think it seems perfectly reasonable to do this.
Through you, Mr. Chair, were numbers that we were comfortable with, and we have not filled those numbers yet.
Sure.
So this would be an effort to fill more of those positions.
And part of that lies in that you run into situations where somebody moves into the area after the first round is closed and are looking for places to send their kids, if you will, are interested in Middleborough, find out Middleborough's a choice. Sometimes, too, the other thing I'll say is Department of Secondary Ed doesn't always update their list of school choices programs, so sometimes you may or may not be listed depending on where you go to, because I also seen other places in our area that I know are school choice places that don't get listed properly, and it's just a technical glitch for some people, and they find out afterwards. So, or they don't list the window that closes. So, any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. MSBA report. Things are still progressing. We are a little behind in a couple of areas, only because of the bad rain that we've had over the past, but everything, it doesn't seem too far behind. And we're still waiting. I think we're about a month out from a bigger update to look at where we are in the sense of making sure we're meeting the goals that we're going to establish.
Mr. Chair, last month's bill was $5.4 million, just the construction alone. So, and this month's probably going to be closer to, what, 9 or 10 in construction. They're really moving. If you haven't had a chance to go to middleborough.k12.ma.us, our school district website, and you click on that button to look at those webcams, there's 3 floors of steel up right now in the classroom wing section, which is really cool to see. And the other camera, you can see some green on the fields. So, interesting progress.
Anyone else have, Mr. Lynch, you have anything else you want to add about MSBA?
Just that I've been able to attend a meeting or two, and it's great working with these people that have been positive. I know that Mr. Hutchinson attended today's meeting. I could not. But I know that there's some frustration with the weather, certainly. Frustrations with setting concrete in the weather and making sure the concrete's where it should be, et cetera. So I know that they're working hard to mitigate all circumstances at this point. So.
The biggest thing has been between our person on site and Fontaine Brothers. They've been very good working with the community. Anyone who's raised a question or an issue, they've always stood up and been there for a conversation. So that's been good. Shall move on to consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda is presented.
Discussion.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I wasn't here on the 28th, so should we take those meeting minutes out?
We can if you want to, that's fine.
Okay.
So the consent agenda will include fundraiser and the approval warrants. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Now we'll do meeting minutes of March 28th.
Motion to approve. Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Aye.
And it's 401. Thank you. Superintendent's evaluation will be at next meeting, as long as I get my Surface Pro back. MASC, I would say that the MASC has extended the early bird special to August 15th. I just got that today. And if people are interested, one of the keynote speakers is Derek Gay. Derek works for Sesame Street. So that should be pretty interesting. We can all relive our childhood and learn about Big Bird. We don't have any policy updates. I am still working with another committee on the foster care amendment, which I think they are going to send in, so that won't be necessarily us, but we can support it when it comes time. Also was handed out to everybody tonight was a list of school committee meeting dates for the 2019-2020 school year. They would include the 22nd of August, which is our one. If you look at the circled numbers, everything would fall into place with a couple exceptions. The exception would be we'd have one for the month of November because the 7th, 8th, and 9th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, the superintendent and I are away at the conference. Anyone else who would attend is welcome. But then we start running into Thanksgiving.
And the 28th is Thanksgiving.
What?
And the 28th of November is Thanksgiving.
Yes. And then we would do one earlier, the 5th and the 19th for December. That would make sure we weren't anywhere near the Christmas holiday. And yes.
With regards to the November one, we will have adequate time for that report for the high school schedule? Or
Yeah.
are we gonna, okay.
That would be the one.
Okay.
That'll be the one. And then everything else seems to look good except for April. And April will be moved back a week because of April vacation. Please.
I heard of an event that's happening here in the Nichols Auditorium on October 10th, and I was wondering what, I guess it's got a decent size group that's planning to attend, and I was wondering what options we have when we run into stuff like that.
We can move our meeting.
Just location-wise, move
Yeah.
it, or?
It's not bad. We've had meetings at the high school before. We can move meetings to the town hall as long as town hall is not booked. There's a variety of places we can move a meeting to.
Can we ask Sean in the back room, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Can we ask Sean in the back room?
Sure.
If
Sean.
he's there. Sean?
Sean. Oh, we haven't fallen asleep.
Sean, can you come over, please? We're looking at the October 10th date and wondering if there's either an alternative place that we can go have a meeting, or do we need to move the date maybe to Wednesday, October 9th, for the school committee meeting? Because we have a new special education parent advisory council that wants to have a big event here on October 10th. Can we go to the town hall and have a meeting there?
Yeah, I would say the best option is probably the town hall, just because it's set up for video.
Can you run that?
No, that would be MCAM, but they can do that as part of their program. I do know that Thursday night is planning board. What's Thursday night?
Planning or ZBA, one or the other.
Okay, so, I mean, maybe we do the high school and we kind of set up a camera and shoot it that way. We can do that. If we have enough planning, we can do anything. It's just figuring out where we're going to be at what point.
But we also may have school committee members who may want to attend that meeting, including the superintendent, obviously. I know I'm not a school committee member. Yet.
Could we move it to the Wednesday, the 9th?
We can move the school committee meeting to the Wednesday. I don't have an issue with that. It sort of breaks with a little bit of tradition.
No, I don't have an issue with breaking with tradition. I just want to make sure there's, so just so we know, just so we're clear, I don't have a problem with that. We just want to make sure the principals know as soon as possible, because they, for the most part, they don't like to do anything during school committee meetings. Yeah.
There's a building committee meeting set for that Wednesday the 9th.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chair, would you consider doing the 17th and 17th and 24th and just do it back-to-back one week? I know it's a week apart, but we get our work done.
That's fine. I mean, I think that's just as easy. It's always probably better to keep it on Thursday, to be honest with you.
If we do the 31st, we could all be in costume.
Yeah, we're not doing the 31st.
Or might I suggest that we go October 17 or October, well, we just have on the 26th, that would be 2 in a row there. October 17th and then November 7th and then November 21st. Instead of having 1 in November, we'd have 2 in November. There's MASC again. Okay, scheduling. They're busy months.
Why don't we do 17th, 24th?
And the reason why is, I know some people have already planned around, they stay away from the Thursday nights in the school district, because they know we kind of think.
We want to avoid All Hallows Eve.
Yeah. Somebody's got to give out candy at my house.
People
And I
come in.
need somebody dressed as a pirate at my school committee meeting either. Mr. Albert?
If I'm hearing right, it sounds like we're sticking at Thursdays, which means we're staying here for location.
Yeah,
right?
but we're going 17th and 24th that month.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay, that sounds great.
Okay. And then, again, that'll be one in November, slight change in December to cover the holiday recess, a slight change in April to cover the recess, and that's really it. The other thing, too, is just so everyone knows, again, it's my intention really to push everybody, so by October, we're going to have the calendar for 2020. By then, we should have a good sense of where we're at. But I think that's going to move a lot of things around for the following year, and I want to give families as much notice as I possibly can about what's going to happen. Because we're going to probably start earlier than we're used to, and we're probably going to have a bigger break at the holiday time, and it's going to turn around to a brand-new high school. So we've talked about that before, but I just want to try to get that out there in the community as quickly as we can.
We also may potentially go earlier before Labor Day.
Yeah, I thought I said that.
Oh, I did too. I'm sorry.
Sorry, no problem. Just because that September Labor Day runs so late.
Late, yep.
So moved on these dates?
Do I hear a second? Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Those are our new dates. Does any?
Just to clarify, Mr. Chair,
Sure.
so that we can enter them into the record at the central office, we're talking about August 22nd, September 12th, September 26th, October 17th, October 24th, November 14th, December 5th, December 19th, January 9th, January 23rd, February 13th, February 27th, March 12, March 26, April 9, April 30, May 14, May 28, June 11, and June 25. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, we'll make sure we get that recorded in the central office, so they can be properly posted.
Anything they'd like to bring up under other? Mr. Giovanni?
On our next meeting, which is on August 22nd, could we have an item on there for an update as to how the high school schedule committee is coming together? You probably would have done it anyway, but That way we can think about it,
And middle school committee.
and the middle school committee as well.
Yep. And we'll also have the new assistant principal at the Nichols, an introduction to Mr. Rowledge.
Excellent. Anything else? Anyone has any questions about it or anything they want to bring up before I?
Motion to adjourn?
Second. Do I hear a second? Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. You will see us all at August 22nd. Thank you very much.